Bum 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 ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum bum bum ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum ba-da-dum bum 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 dum dum bum bum ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum bum bum ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum ba-da-bum bum bum bum, bum bum ba-da-bum bum bum bum, bum bum ba-da-bum bum bum bum, bum 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 ba-da-dum. Bum 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 bum, bum bum ba-da-dum bum bum bum, bum 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 ba-da-dum. All right, Gustavo, Adolfo, Uribe here on this episode of the Whiteboard. I'm gonna go over microphones. So microphone overview, the different kinds of microphones, and yeah. So first things off, check out my Amazon book list. It's on the description. Click on that. It goes to Amazon. I have books that I recommend, and I highly recommend Bruce Sweden's book. He's the engineer that did the Michael Jackson albums, and he's super duper awesome engineer. And yeah, and get his books. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of other recording books that are like more drier or whatever, but this one is kind of like the practical. Okay, what do I need to really know to make it sound good? And there's a lot of good advice. A lot of the stuff that I'm explaining to you guys, aesthetic wise, comes from him. Let's get to it. Okay, so first things first, a microphone is basically something that takes sound pressure waves in the air and it turns it into an electrical signal, okay? There's the air pressure and convert it to a digital, well, not digital, excuse me. That's not what I meant to say. Digital is zeros and ones. Electrical signal. Okay? And that electrical signal goes through the microphone cable, okay? And then that's why you need a preamp. A preamp is a preamplifier. And that makes the signal, amplifies the signal so it's much louder, and then it gets recorded into your DA. If you're recording to a computer, it goes through like some type of DA interface or AD, whatever. It takes the electrical signal and converts it into a digital signal, which is zeros and ones, and it basically takes this electrical signal and it takes snapshots, little snapshots. It cuts it up into little snapshots, and it turns into a code, a numbers like 01001, whatever the fuck it is, and your software and whatever, it translates that digital signal, and it records it. That's if you're assuming that you're recording to a digital whatever. Unless you're recording to tape or whatever, it just takes the electrical signal and it records it to tape. Okay? So whatever. Now this is really important. I just described the signal chain. Or signal path, whatever you want to call it. Now let's talk about the actual types of microphones, or the patterns of the microphones. Now, knowing that the microphone takes air pressure waves and converts it into an electrical signal, different microphones have different patterns, right? So that means let's see. that means that these patterns, like let's say the microphone is here, and the air pressures that are here in these patterns, that's what's getting picked up, right? That's what's getting picked up. So that's really important. That's really, really fucking important. It's not just, oh, just get this mic, bro, because it's fucking expensive. No, 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 no. Microphones have different patterns. This pattern right here is a figure eight because it looks like a figure eight. This right here has a heart shape. That's called cardioid, meaning heart shaped. Okay. This is a hypercardioid because it's kind of like a heart shape, but it's more like concentrated. And then this right here is a omnidirectional, meaning that it can take sounds from everywhere. So knowing that, then you can say, okay, they have different applications, right? A figure eight, you can use it to record, just one instrument or whatever, or you could use it to record different sources that are opposing, whatever. And then the cardioid, it's usually used for face on, like vocals or some type of instrument, whatever. Hypercardioid, usually a shotgun microphone, like it's like a telescope. Like you say you're doing a safari and you want to pick up sounds that are like, a couple, far further away. And you could get like a shotgun microphone that's going to have a hypercardioid pattern. That's typically what that's for. And then Omni, let's say you want to record the ambient sounds, the room noise, then you get some Omnis. You know what I'm saying? So those are the different kinds of patterns. Okay, now let's talk about the different types. There's a ribbon, there's condenser, and dynamic. Okay, now these are important because it's the different kinds of mics. Okay, and the reason why they're called ribbon, condenser, and dynamic is kind of like describes the mechanism of how they work. So ribbon mic is like a little ribbon like that, and the sound hits it. That's why it's a figure eight, right? Because the sound can hit it from here, sound can hit it from here, and it can convert that shit. It's a little ribbon, like a little aluminum or strip or something like that. Okay. Now, the ribbon mics, they used to be in vogue, like pre-40s or something like that. But what happens is they were very brittle. They could fuck up real easy. You know what I'm saying? Very sensitive. So that was like pre-40s, and they kind of not in vogue anymore. But then the Royer company came along. Recently, let's just say, recently, like 2010s or some shit like that. And they got this model called the Royer 121. And this Royer has actually gotten a Grammy for the technology. And I have a Royer 21. It's pretty cool. And the characteristics of a ribbon mic is that they have a sweeter sound, more natural. The roll off is a little bit more very natural sound. And the Royer, what they did is they basically made the ribbon mic so it's less sensitive, like a little bit more better, more stronger, I guess. So using those, having those ribbon characteristics, now the engineers, they have like a better palette, because they're not gonna use vintage mics like that shit if they, you know, there's a certain, you know, you gotta take care of the mics, you gotta covet and cherish the mics. But you know, if you drop a mic and it doesn't fucking work anymore, you know, down the drain, you know. So now condenser mic, the way that works is there's like two little circles, right? And this is the side view. There's two little circles like this, and it's a magnet, right? So basically, the way that works is this: the pressure, the sound, or whatever, it moves it, and the magnets, they create the electrical signal. The two magnets, the way they fucking do it. I don't know the exact science or, you know, super science of that shit, but that's basically the gist of it, right? And those condenser mics, usually a cardioid or a cardioid pattern, you know. And usually they're like this, right? Because the way that you know, electromagnetic fields work, or some fucking shit like that, I don't know. And then they could come in like really fat mics like this, or they come in like little pencil mics. And the reason you know, the fat tube mics might have like a tube in them or not, and then you got those little condenser mics that are good for like cymbals or pianos or whatever, like small little pencil mics. Now the funny thing with the condensers is that you got Telefunken or something. So what happened with this is, the history is that in World War II, Hitler was like, yo, I need some better microphones so my voice sounds better when I'm doing my public speaking. And so the German company started developing these condenser mics. And that's where you have, I think Telefunken turned into Neumann or something like that. And that's where you get the standard in recording industry microphones. And the standard is the Neumann pencil mics, the U87 and the M141, 49, something like that. These are really fucking expensive, by the way. I used to have a U87, and I got it at the time like in 2004, maybe like 1,500. Now they're like 3,500. 10 years later, something like that. So if you can get one, and you know, I had to sell it because I was broke and I needed the money, and I regret it, but you got it. Sometimes life kicks you in the nuts, man. Dynamic. Now dynamic is basically has a coil like that, right? Like a magnet with a coil, and then basically the sound pressure moves the coil, and the coil creates the electrical signal. That's how that works. So because it has like a coil, then that means that it's more robust, less sensitive, and they're usually used for live applications like stage mics. You see the Shure 58. Oops. 58. SM58 like this. Shure SM58 for stage mics. They're also used for kick mics, like for the actual kick drum mics, because they can take a lot of sound pressure level, high SPL. And so kicks, and then believe it or not, the Shure SM7B, I believe, is like this fat radio broadcasting looking mic, um, and that's usually used for broadcast, and Bruce Sweden used it for Michael Jackson, because Michael Jackson has like a very percussive type voice and stuff, and he said that this mic worked really well for his voice. So that's another concept, is the Bruce Sweden method, is you got to use the mic to accentuate the vocal characteristics. In other words, the right mic for the job. You know, you don't take the most expensive one, take the one that works the best. And this one's actually $300. Kind of interesting. So, if I were you, if you're an independent artist and you're just doing stuff in your room, I would go with the SM7B because it's a dynamic microphone, and the cool thing with dynamics is that they're not gonna pick up too much noise because you got to be kind of close to them. So if you're doing vocals in your room, that would probably be the best way to go. And I probably should have got that mic, but I was going for like a smooth, like vintage kind of sound, so I went with the 121 to record my vocals, the Royer with the ribbon. But that one was like, a Royer is about like 1,500, 1,300, something like that. And this one's 300. A Neumann U87, you're gonna drop something like 3,500, 3,500 to get that. So if you're an independent musician and you just want to record in your room or make demos, either get the SM7B 300 for $300, or you get a Rode, I believe it's NT, what is that one again? NT1A for $230. For $230, and it comes with a pop filter. So, in my opinion, for a demo or recording in your room, either get the Rode or get the Shure. If you have a strong voice, rock sound voice, get that one. If you're just regular average Joe, then just get the Rode. Because most likely, if you can get good acoustics in your room and like pretty good soundproof and somewhat dry, then you might be able to get away with some stuff for a professional release if you do it the right way. But either way, you're gonna have to get a preamp. Oh yeah. Also, another note is that these are good for demos. SM58, $100, and you can do demos. The thing is, it just the top end, you have to kind of raise the top end up, but they actually work really well for demos. Okay, so let's talk about some practical shit here. Is that the preamps? Now, for whatever microphone you're using, you gotta have some high quality microphone cables, and you gotta run it through a preamp. Depending on the mic that you have, usually the condenser mics need phantom power. That's a 48 volt for condenser. And why does it need phantom power? Because the magnets, it's like electromagnetic charge that they hold, so that's what creates the electrical signal. So they need to be powered. The dynamic mics is a voice coil, so it's like a physical sound pressure, and the ribbon is the same. It's like a physical sound pressure. Um, so the preamps will supply that 48 phantom power for condenser mics if you have a condenser mic. Now let's talk. Okay, so that's some, you need to know that. Now with the preamps, this is kind of tricky, bro. If you have like, if you're just recording at home like demo style, that computer interface isn't gonna cut it. If you want a professional sound, this is how you get professional sounds. Professional sound has an expensive mic or SM500 7B, whatever, but a high quality mic, whatever type of it is, it's gotta be like the best mic you can get, right? And it goes through a expensive preamp. Expensive preamp. Why? Because an expensive preamp, in the old days, the preamps were in the mixers. That's why you had like these big ass mixing consoles, where you could where it plugs in here, and then you could do like panning and levels and all that shit. All of it was included in the mixers, but those mixers were hella fucking expensive, and holy shit. But nowadays, you don't, those mixers, you don't see it anymore. It's very rare. What usually ends up happening is they go through like a strip, a preamp strip, like either like a vocal strip, or they'll have like a lunch box where it just has some like gain and stuff like that, and then it'll get recorded digitally. Digitally, whatever. And then from there, it's in the box mixing. In the box, and they would do the mixer like in the computer, and then it gets mastered. That's usually what happens nowadays. But because now everything is so fucking like wild west, sometimes you might see combinations of the preamps, like a preamp with a compressor, a preamp with some EQ, whatever. It depends, and the more shit that you have it, the more expensive it's gonna be, or it just might be like a really nice just a preamp. So the preamps, there's like two ways to go with this shit. There's a tube, and then there's like a transistor base. Transistor base. Like a Neve or something like that, and then tube will be like a UA, like a United Audio, something like that. And the tube basically uses these tubes in the circuit board or whatever it is, and these vacuum tubes gives it the flavor. On the Neve or whatever, they have like these big ass transistors on the circuit boards, and that gives it the flavor. I think the drawback with the tubes is that it gives a lot of flavor, but it does have a higher noise floor. Yeah. So whenever you use tube technology, there's a little sound that is just there, like a like there's just it's just noisy. It's fucking noisy. But when you crank it and you saturate those tubes, it sounds real good, bro. And the reason is because it's boosting the third harmonic. Okay, that's how they distort. So, anyways, that's why. The same thing with the transistor, but the transistor has a cleaner sound. And I think this technology came after the tubes. in the development of audio recording technology, and and yeah, and then after that it's probably like, the computer interface fucking bullshit. But you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you guys. If you're gonna get the professional sound and you're gonna use the preamp, obviously, it's gonna be either tube or transistor based. Like, from like a 40s to 60s circa technology. They didn't really start using digital type shit till like mid 90s or something like that. Mid 90s. Oh, I'll just say 90s. No, mid 90s. Okay. So they started like, and everything was recorded to tape until like the mid 90s when like the digital revolution came and all that fucking shit. So the technology for audio recording technology is actually kind of old. Yeah, except for the digital shit. But then what happens is they realize, oh man, digital, it has its. The cool thing is it doesn't deteriorate, and you can make copies that are like, they don't lose quality. With tape, every time you make a copy, it loses some quality. So there's some problems with that shit. That's why they don't use it anymore, because it's a fucking pain in the ass to use. Digital is actually a lot easier to use, but sonically, this shit sounds better. This tube transistor based technology. So that's why it's still around, and that's why now it's very expensive, because people have to build the fucking shit. It's not just some software program. No. You got to build, and you got to make sure it's good quality. So these shits are like usually really heavy, or not that heavy, but So anyway, so that's for the preamps. Now, for preamps, if you're looking for a preamp to buy, your independent producer, the list goes very. There's a lot of brands out there. There's a lot of good products, but like I said, basically, is it tube or is it transistor based, and just one single channel like preamp, like with no like EQ or compressors. Don't be surprised if it's between $500 to $1,000 for just one channel, just preamp. Okay? Don't be surprised. Yeah. Because if you get a really nice mic and you don't have a nice preamp, it's not gonna work, dude. You need to get the fucking preamp, bro. If you have a shitty mic and you have a nice preamp, it may work. It may work. And here's the thing. I'm gonna keep it real here. The preamp, you need to get the fucking preamp, no matter what. That's some fucking important shit, because, you gotta boost that signal. And the mic, it has this thing where you get to a point of diminishing returns. So the more expensive, it's like this. Okay, so like most cheapy mics are gonna be like let's say here, more expensive, It takes a lot of money for that little bit of extra difference in your sound. For example, if everything is like professional in the recording studio, because that's where you really hear the difference, right? But the actual differences in the microphone qualities, it is very subtle, very subtle. Once you start getting into the really high-end mics, and you could tell, but if you know what you're doing, you could kind of with the microphones. What you really want to do is think of a microphone as an instrument. What microphone, the best microphone you can use for the right application, and then you're gonna get the best sound you can get. So yeah, and then so you can get away with more shitty mics if you have a nice preamp, because nobody, the average listener doesn't know shit about mics. They don't know shit about recording. They don't really care. But as an engineer or a producer or whatever, that's something to be aware of. So don't think like, I gotta get like a $3,000 mic, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you don't have the preamp, if you're not recording in a professional studio, then what's the point? You know what I'm saying? But if you're at home or something, you can get like, that Rode. It's not gonna sound as good as a U87, but with a really nice preamp, and then you do some EQ in certain areas, no one's gonna be able to tell the difference with the final mix. When you do some A/B comparisons, yeah, you can hear it. But basically, what you want to do is shitty mics. If it's a condenser, well, you got to listen to what the sound is. But basically, you're gonna do two things. With microphones, you're either gonna boost some high end, or just kind of do some cutting. Because a shitty mic, condenser mic, you might have to cut some stuff, because it might be like really trebly, and you might have to boost some give it some warmth. If it's a dynamic mic, they're usually like this, so you have to like boost the treble up, and that's how you get it to sound kind of like in the ballpark of what it needs to sound like. Dynamic, and then condenser. With the ribbon mic, with the 121 that I have, apparently like the high end it has two sides, and one of the sides has a higher top end, I think, but I just use the regular side, whatever, and I put it to the tube amp, and it has like a very warm sound, but it doesn't have, because it's in a hip-hop context, it kind of needs to cut a little bit more. So I would raise a little bit of the top end, just the air, just to give it some breath and some air. And then I would cut here, maybe like around 300, roll it off around maybe 150, something like that. And that's kind of how it would look like, because I have to cut some of that. It's really warm, so I got to cut some of that. Because when you're doing the mix, you want your kick and snare and shit, you want that shit to punch. You know what I'm saying? So you want to take a little bit out of there. If you're doing like, if I was doing some ballad with strings and shit, then I wouldn't cut so much. You know what I'm saying? The voice would, some things to think about. Let's see, what else do we got? Alright, so to sum it up, check out my Amazon list, get the Bruce Sweden book, yeah, and then that's like a microphone overview for those people that don't know about microphones. Here you go, bam, sas, here's some golden nuggets. Thanks for listening. Please comment, just subscribe, share if this was helpful to you, and if you're looking for beats, chateaucholo.com. licensing those beats, baby. Gotta get that money. All right, thanks for watching.